Welcome back to another video in Finding Freedom. So as the thumbnail and title says, well, if you're living a life of crime, let's say you sell drugs, yada, 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 a couple metric tons or whatever the case, and you want to go legit, well, then here's how to do it. So in order to go to legit, first you have to establish a company or entity. You might know this already thanks to Google, an LLC, which can be classified as an S Corp or a C Corp. This will go ahead and give you, well, certain levels of protection. Certain states also have certain protections as far as when it comes to piercing the corporate veil. So you can do this in a variety of ways. So first of all, you want to go ahead and research places like Wyoming, Delaware, etc., Vegas, yada, yada, and then continue on. Now, after you establish your entity, you want to go ahead and reach out to pharmaceutical companies because just as drugs are sold on the street, they're also abused in hospitals and everything else by nefarious doctors or whomever, whether it's in the VA system, whether it's in the local hospital system, so on and so forth, because they get a cut, right? You know, it's all either based on brand or generic. They don't know how to make up their mind, but they make a lot of money. And don't even get me started on insurance. So let's go ahead and make some deals with pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer or Moderna or all these other ones, right? Because, well, let's face it, if they're going to do the same thing, but then just cut it anyways, you might as well get a cut. Right? So you might as well go ahead and sell your opium, your cocaine, and everything else, as well as everything else. Mind you, this is for legal and educational purposes only. So if you are, well, a criminal, you probably shouldn't do this. But if you want to be educated in finances, business, so on and so forth, go ahead and smash that like button and don't forget to follow this. So, and share it to as many people as possible because sharing is caring. And Lord knows people care and want to be Karens, and, well, dentists fall right up in there, right? Because they're doctors too. So let's continue. So things like hydrocodone, Oxycontin, so on and so forth also contain the very things that you sell. The thing is, they're sold all around the world and they get synthesized, so on and so forth. If you ever heard the acronym SAD, RAT, so on and so forth, remember lithium was put through rats and then synthesized into medication later. Now I'll let you ask the person whoever freaking dictated that one, but it's something that is utilized, right? So think about it. It was put on the gold standard. Most people talk about the gold standard, so think about it. And then, of course, from there, we can move forward, right? Because now that you have your deals in place with different pharmaceutical companies, let's say you're into agriculture, right? There's certain states that provide legal licenses for legit products. Now you can go ahead and establish a business deal and negotiated relationship with them. Now, how do you get to transport it, right? Well, you can utilize, either large companies like Maersk, so on and so forth, etc., or any other company. However, within the terms of the contract, you have to make sure that there is security involved, right? Make sure that it's sealed. Make sure that the seal has a serial number. Make sure that it follows similar transactions. If you ever spoke to ATF or worked with the military transporting ammunition, you would know this, right? So you would go ahead and make sure that all that stuff is there because it's for medical purposes wherever the freaking pharmaceutical company is creating, whatever it is that they're selling to the hospitals anyway, as well as the VA and all those government contracts, right? So remember, when somebody diagnoses somebody, whether it's true or not, and it's probably not sometimes, and then, of course, from there, you want to go ahead and then, prescribe them something because they also comes on as a added fee on the insurance statement as a line code, right? It's a numerical code, sometimes known as a nomenclature, so on and so forth, description, DODAC, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, you'll get this, talk to a logistics person, talk to anybody that's dealt with manifests, etc. Now, you can do this all over the place because the World Health Organization, obviously already knows, especially information that is being shared. So you can establish business relationships and establish the fact that this is going from point A to point B, whatever. Now you have a legal reason to transport things across state lines, i.e. over the road, right? Now, I wouldn't get an independent contractor, so on and so forth. I would get a legitimate business. because then you both share liability. See, if you get a company like Maersk, who is well known, they deliver products for Walmart and a couple other places, so on and so forth, they would go ahead and orchestrate a deal as far as insurances being involved. So you would share the, well, responsibility. If you deal with a independent contractor, someone that owns their own rig, so on and so forth, it might get a little tricky because the insurance wouldn't back the product that is being transported. So make sure you look for large logistics companies that can do so and such, right? But you also have to make sure that your paperwork checks out. So if you know any attorneys, any lawyers, so on and so forth, well, then you want to get in contact with those ones that are professional, that are already checked out, so on and so forth, that have done business deals, that also do logistics, as well as making sure that you incorporate a criminal attorney or lawyer that specializes in the field with 5+ years of experience already. Now, the reason I state this is because you're going to need somebody to write the legalities and everything else within the minute details of the law for specificity and specific reasons, using proper terminology, vernacular, etc. It won't be for botany reasons. It would be for agriculture if you're shipping to California or wherever it's legal. Oregon has a plethora of laws that make a lot of things legal. So if you dabble in other things, you can ship stuff to those states as well as countries that allow it, which incorporates, well, the merchant trade, so on and so forth, cargo ships, etc., blah, blah, blah. Now, because everything is legit, it's underneath a business, it's not illegal because you're doing business with a pharmaceutical company, right? You ever heard of medicinal purposes, etc., right? Most places will provide a medical card or whatever the case may be, but they're still giving out pain pills like you would not believe, whether that's Oxycontin or whatever the case may be. And this is known to be derived from other things like opium, X, Y, and Z. So let's say whatever your product or service is something that is, well, something that you can utilize in the negotiations in terms of the contract in which pharmaceutical company, whether it's a startup or not, because there's many of them, you don't have to work with a big one, but you can transport across, well, the waters safely and legally. So you don't have to worry about DEA and everything else, right? And then that would get them off your ass, right? Along with a lot of other problems that would occur. Now, when it comes to the accounting of it, well, because it's above board, you're going to have to pay taxes. That is perfectly fine. Remember, in business, taxes is backwards than personal, right? Debits or credits and credits or debits. It's backwards. And if it's backwards, well, then you just got to make sure you understand that taxes are backwards as well. In your personal check, see, if you don't know how to set up an allotment, which would be very beneficial and your company doesn't want to help you out because they never got a PowerPoint, then you would want to do that. If not, then you would want to follow this somewhat loosely, or you can utilize ChatGPT, Claude, or any other AI system. Don't be too specific, but talk about shipping overseas and accounting and so on and so forth. Now, when it comes to business, you get taxed on the things after expenses, right? So if you spend all the money on expenses, whether you're running it like a nonprofit or not, which means you have to go to goose egg like the YMCA, so on and so forth, etc. They're a nonprofit, right? So therefore, everybody gets paid extremely well. And then when the company has to pay taxes, that's different. And then if you set up allotments, your allotments can come out first, just like in business, but because it's on the personal side, you get taxed after. So let's say you pay your people salary and they're very well paid, no matter the salary, yes? Then they would set up allotments for things like rental properties or homes, mortgages, etc. Whatever the case may be. Let's say you have a mortgage payment, set up an allotment for that. So that comes out first, right? It's counted as an expense. So therefore it reduces your tax bracket. This is how the rich stay rich and the wealthy stay wealthy, so on and so forth. It's not a tax loophole, so on and so forth. It's literally basic accounting. You can learn it at a freaking associate's degree. So now when you're in business, you want to make sure your expenses are up to par. Pay the shippers and logistics people well, extremely well. Why? Because it builds trust. They will take your contracts over other contracts. When you pay for speed, speed is accomplished. When you get people to do their proper due diligence gets accomplished, right? You won't have any mistakes, right? You won't have any misdiagnosis or whatever the case may be, right? You won't have anybody catching amnesia or skimming, because everything can be tracked digitally, and you won't even have to use cryptocurrency, right? You can use the regular currency that you're using and then go ahead and follow the rules of business, being above board, not working in the law or below it, right? Because let's face it, if you're following the law and everything's above board like a business would be, especially if you have everything set up correctly, then you would go ahead and have this whole setup done very well. So let's say you get paid $250,000 a year, or you pay your employees as such, and then you have security watch over everything. Because of the fact that it's going to a pharmaceutical company, it's not going to get deemed or looked at differently, right? Because do hospitals have checks and balances? Probably not. Do doctors have checks and balances? Probably not. So on and so forth, etc. Because, well, let's face it, right? Money rules the world, and if you want to own a piece of Greenland, what color is the currency? So let's get back to this. Now, there's other countries that also provide, obviously, medical treatment and things like that, but they also need to provide those services, well, through pharmaceuticals. Now, based in psychology, if someone goes to a doctor, they're 9 times out of 10 likely expecting to get a prescription, which incentivizes people to give one to make them feel better, right? But it also increases the amount of insurance that they're able to cash in on if they have insurance, whether it's Medicaid, Medicare, or not, right? So it really doesn't matter, right? Does it? I mean, hell, I went to one hospital out here in Huntersville, and they were talking and bragging about how they make $1,600 to $1,800 off of each mental health patient a day. A day. That's not on top of everything else that they probably charge a premium for, and they upcharge, so on and so forth, so they can pay everybody well to also keep their mouth shut. Think about it, for a reason. Now, if these people are paid well, don't you think that they will know, like, and trust you, which is like, well, a marketing thing, right? They would know, like, and trust you, right? Because you pay them well, you pay them on time, everything's getting paid, and then all of a sudden, well, you don't have any legal issues. The only thing you would possibly have to do is possibly keep a legal firm on what's known as a retainer. The reason you want them on a retainer is because you want to be able to contact them whenever your ass gets in trouble, because you do not want to cut corners. I'm sure that's written somewhere. So do not cut corners, right? Follow the business advice and then cross-reference it and do your research, because this is for educational purposes. And within education, you want to study. And study means to, well, understand, or to listen, not just hear, right? Because to listen is to listen with, well, the intent to understand, right? So how do you stay out of trouble? Well, you study business and you don't worry about taxes. You have to understand how taxes work. If you understand how taxes work and a tax strategy, then you can put more money in your pocket, pay for all your crap, whatever it is, and then be just like the wealthy or not. Now, if you don't know me by now, this is Finding Freedom. It's an homage to a plethora of things. Let's call it Finding Forrester, for all we know, right? Now, that was a movie about a chess player or something like that, or Searching for Bobby Fischer was that. Finding Forrester was about Sean Connery and an African-American kid who, well, people didn't believe that he wrote half the stuff that he wrote, and then people, well, just started screwing him over until Sean Connery at the end stood up for him because they thought he was lying. So anyways, go ahead and check those 2 movies out, or Search for Bobby Fischer. That's another one with a little kid. Morpheus is in it. You should totally check it out. It's an awesome chess movie. Some people could talk and play chess at the same time. Others can't because it interrupts their thought pattern. So just think about it. If I'm moving too fast for you, well, I'm sorry, because it's been 5+ years and people been, well, forcing me to slow down, and I'm tired of it. So let's help everybody out by doing more and doing better. See, if you don't have an issue with the law doesn't have an issue with you. If you follow the same rules as the hospital guidelines, as well as pharmaceutical companies all around the world, along with the World Health Organization, then you will be at the same level or treated as such, should you not. All you need is at least one person to be successful, and then that can be utilized as a case study, case law, whatever, historical fact, this versus that, etc., with the date, so that you can present that to a judge, and then the judge will say, oh my god, they let you out, or and then everybody catches amnesia, and how are you in business, and this, that, and the third, and why are you doing this, that, and the third. Oh, everything checks out. Then what's the issue? Well, suspicion is one thing, but following the law is another. And for some reason, even if you try to do the right thing, people screw you over. So you might as well do the right thing and make money while you do it, right? So remember, when it comes to taxes, you get taxed after all your expenses are paid out in business. When you collect the check, you want to set up an allotment that is like defining your expenses. And then after which, well, based within the tax code and law, they would tax you after all that money gets pulled out. So if you make $60,000 a year, so on and so forth, make sure you reduce your tax bracket, so on and so forth. If you make 100, if you make 200, $300,000 a year, set up your allotments accordingly. Could you have investment properties? Yes, but that's different. So do not get too creative, but you can have a nice place, right? You can have a nice car. You have insurance, you have healthcare, you have bills, etc. And then, of course, people like to sell pills, or say give them a pill instead of smacking them in the face with a pillow because they lost their freaking mind. So this is what you want to do. You want to go ahead and study finance and taxes, and you want to study Siseburn's-Oxley, which came out after 2001 9/11 incident due to a lot of fraud that was happening. So you want to go ahead and study that as well. And I know that sounds really rudimentary because it was probably in Suits with Mike Ross and he was playing hearts, etc., blah, blah, blah. But I mean, think about it, really. If you understand what you're doing, can you really get in trouble for doing the right thing? Most people will, depending on who you are, if you're targeted in a specific way, or they want to use you as a patsy. So, or they just want to press buttons to see exactly how things are done, or etc., and just keep pushing the button, pushing the button, pushing the button, until eventually you just say, you know what, let me just help everybody out, and we'll see how the world goes from there. Now, if you put more money in your pocket, you're able to invest more money, yes? Now you can utilize that for other investment properties, and you would want to take out another LLC for that, and then of course set up a holding company, and then charge the LLCs a management fee that goes to the holding company. From the management fee, then you could pay everybody out there as far as your board of directors, as well as other higher ups, right? Because the management fee would be for the holding company that manages all the LLCs or the other entities underneath the business. This is the way you would set up an umbrella. I'm sure you heard of bundle insurance. Similar concept, right? You pay less. So if you already set up an allotment for your guys, bring in a financial professional, CPA, CFA, so on and so forth, etc., along with the CFO. Make sure everything checks out. Make sure you have a controller. Check for your accounts payable and accounts receivable. That's going to be important. Make sure you're doing net 30, 60, or 90 and make that definable within the legalities and the terms of the contract. Make sure that you have the logistics routes, and make sure that when they go through checkpoints, everything weighs accordingly and correct, and make sure you use seals. The reason you want to use a serialized seal, especially one that is possibly, well, tamper-proof, is because if anybody tampers with it, then the product is no good. Then you can call law enforcement and tell them you got robbed on your shipment, so on and so forth. And your companies, both of them, will understand that, because law has to go ahead and report things, do they not? Whether they're taking notes on a piece of paper or wearing a body cam or whatever the case may be. Now, it also depends on where those legalities lie, right? Because in other words, well, if it's sealed, it's not supposed to be tampered with. The moment something is tampered with or the count is off, there's a damage, or somebody's stealing something, or theft, right? But because this is for medical purposes or pharmaceutical purposes that suit medical research and development and experimental treatment, whatever the case may be, so on and so forth, that would be not only annotated on the manifest, but as well as in the contract within the negotiation. So think about it. If these companies are making billions and trillions of dollars off of things like cancer, heart disease, and everything else, shouldn't you be able to cash in on all the other crap too? Think about it. Run yourself like a business, educate yourself like a scholar, and don't forget, following the law is good because it keeps you out of trouble. The moment you get too creative and you want to say something freely and somebody gets offended or they get butthurt, they want to take their anger out. But if the paperwork checks out, and some people go through paperwork and some people hate paperwork, right? So they may overlook a lot of stuff, but then still dig for a lot of stuff, right? So keep this with a grain of salt, take this with a grain of salt. And if you love this video, do me a favor and show me some love. L-U-V, not L-O-V-E, that's played out. And hit that like button. Talk to you guys later.